Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to Cover, where we bring literature and discussion together. My name is Sam.
Vanessa.
Brian.
And we are here today to talk about American Pastoral. As always, here is your disclaimer. There are going to be major spoilers. Now, I not only read the book, but I also watched the film. So I'm going to be able to answer some questions for these guys that they may have not known about it.
He was the only one who watched the film because it was actually limited release, very hard to get a hold of.
Very hard to get a hold of film. She is right. It was not really even playing in Las Vegas. So I had to wait until it was available for streaming, and I did, and thank goodness I did, because there are some things to talk about between them. In the beginning, when we were kind of coming up with this idea, this concept of having a group, a book club essentially for the internet, this was one of the first ideas that came about. We saw a movie trailer for it, which is the irony, and we started talking about how a lot of books nowadays are turning into film. So if you notice a trend or a theme that we're doing right now, we're going to be in the phase of doing book to film. And this one stood out because of the trailer. It had Ewan McGregor, Dakota Fanning.
A lot of like big name actors.
Yeah. Even with the limited release, it had a huge cast, and it's a Pulitzer Prize winner. And we wanted to start off with something really challenging.
And it was that.
And it was that. So let's get lit and right into it. What are you guys' thoughts about it?
Oh,
challenging was the word, right?
Challenging.
Yeah, I think the first, I don't know, like 80 pages.
100.
Yeah, no, because honestly, once they're at the reunion, it really does start picking up.
Sure.
But anything prior to that is it's almost like
a backstory.
And yeah, it's a lot of information. I'm not gonna lie, the first 100 pages took me a while to get through. I think it wasn't until it really hit the reunion and you start really finding out about the characters. That's really where my my interest was peaked.
Yeah.
And I've never had a book make me feel so stupid.
She's being honest.
Yes.
I share that.
I mean, it's an intelligent novel, but
definitely.
I also feel like it gets lost in the you as the reader, you get lost in like the style of it.
Okay.
And it's a very stylistic novel.
There's a reason it won a Pulitzer Prize, people. I don't think this is going to be an easy read or a quick read because it's a challenge.
I'm a fast reader, and I think it took me over a month to read. I think it took me I think I read the entire Harry Potter series in a month. So.
I agree. And I think, for me watching the film, I think Brian would have appreciated that the beginning went right to the reunion, and it focused right on the narrator, Nathan, and essentially him meeting Jerry. And I will say that that's where the book and the film split. There are so many layers to the book because Nathan is fictionalizing a man's story. He's making this whole thing up. He's guessing about the Swede. In the film, it's essentially Jerry telling what he depicts as a true story about his own brother. So I'll tell you that's a major difference.
So, and that's, I'm actually sad that didn't translate over to the movie, although I don't know how it would have because I don't even know if the book did it well.
Yeah.
But it's a very non-linear story, and it's also very obvious to the reader, and Nathan says it to the reader, that he's essentially making up this story based on a couple of facts.
Hints.
Yes, hints really of what happens. And it is a fantastical story. It's basically this hero, the Swede.
Everyone's childhood hero.
Yes, everyone's childhood hero.
Like the all-American boy,
yes.
like tall, beautiful, athletic,
yes,
charming,
charismatic.
Yeah.
Married the Miss
New Jersey.
New Jersey.
Perfect life.
Perfect life. And then Nathan, the author, finds out that his
offspring,
his daughter, his love and joy, commits this horrible crime.
Right.
She basically carries out a political bombing.
Yeah.
Terrorist attack.
A domestic terrorist attack.
Yeah.
And she's quite the interesting character.
Yeah. Now this book, it's 20 years old, so we're talking late 90s. This is before 9/11. This is probably before Columbine, if I'm not mistaken, because Columbine took place in 1999.
Yes.
We're talking like 1997 people. This wasn't a hot topic at the time. It was controversial.
Yes.
And now it seems that it's almost translated into our normal routine where we can hear about this kind of thing, or at least
terrible how relevant the story felt.
But the story takes place in an era of the 60s. So
like late 40s really when you
between them.
Yes.
And then it leads
post World War II.
Yeah.
Leading into the 60s and the what war was it they were protesting?
Vietnam.
The Vietnam.
Yes.
Yeah,
So it's
Vietnam
a very like Leave It to Beaver atmosphere.
Right.
The Swede has it all.
Yeah.
And then
but there's an ugly side of it. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a very ugly side to it. And you, while you're reading the book, which is a very difficult read, you get this sense that they had everything. They gave their daughter everything. They Mary, the daughter, they gave her everything she could possibly want or need in life, and yet she commits this horrible crime. And it's almost like Nathan, the author, is reaching for some reason why she committed it. He even makes up this. It's one of the creepiest scenes. One of many creepy scenes.
I was gonna say, tell us which one.
So I'm curious if they show.
Popped into my head.
I'm curious if they show it in the movie.
I'll let you know.
I think Mary is maybe 12, 13 years old.
Yeah.
She's in her swimsuit.
Yep,
like her and the Swede are in the car. They're playing around, and they kiss.
Yeah, so
he kisses his daughter.
Right, and that was really bothersome. And I, you know what's interesting is like I think that is the type of scene that can really only you can only get away with that in literature.
Yes.
You can't depict that on film. And I think that the movie did a good job of translating that scene into what it was supposed to be, which was really uncomfortable. But no, they did not kiss. The young girl, I don't know her name. The young girl who played the actress was really, really good. And just kind of to add to that substance, I think that Nathan, with his research, had some really good inclinations, starting with her stutter, because that was one of the things that Jerry did tell him, was that she had a terrible stutter, and that could have led to all these different things.
Yes.
I don't know necessarily that it would have been like a bombing, but that's kind of where it starts.
Yeah, I think my issue with Nathan and really like his obsession. It was an obsession over
because he makes up this entire story.
It's almost like a romantic obsession.
Right.
Like it's like he's kind of obsessed. Like maybe and maybe that's what the author was going for, considering that the time that the story took place is not where someone could really be openly like admit that they were homosexual or that they had an attraction to another man or something like that. So I think that there is kind of that hint, but I think throughout the whole book, and what kind of makes it intriguing is kind of like the ambiguity of the writing. It kind of leaves things to kind of like for your own mind to wander and to kind of try to piece things together, kind of like he's piecing things together from the little information that he did gather from the Swede and from Jerry.
And Nathan, the author, he tells you up front that he has made up this story, that he only knows about the bombing, and he knew Swede when they were children, basically. So it's always in the back of your head as you're reading this very involved story but this is all kind of just in Nathan's head. Like he knew the daughter had a stutter, he knew this. So, you're reading it, and even that kissing scene. Yeah. It's almost like Nathan played with the idea of making his hero like this anti-hero, this dark character, but then he couldn't do it. He was like, no, but I love the Swede. I can't do it.
He was a gifted fictional writer, if you think about it, because he created this entire story based off of very few facts or information that he knew.
Which in itself is fiction, by the way.
Yeah, it is. It's a fictional book.
It's like an inception of a book. It's a book within a book.
I don't know if you guys knew, but I did a little bit of research on the author, and this book is part of a trilogy. It's not a linear trilogy. So the characters in this book, the only character that is the same in each part of the trilogy rather, is Nathan, the author, and he does the same thing in each book. He essentially takes a few pieces of information and he builds a story on
his whole life.
So, but at least he's good at it.
Yes,
right? He's not terrible at it. I mean, it's convincing.
We do have to bring up the ending too.
Gosh. Yeah. Let's do
and
that.
I'm very curious to hear how the ending of the movie is. So the ending essentially is that
the dinner
Swede has just found his daughter after many years.
Yeah. In exile.
In exile after this bombing. She's become this like
Jane.
Jane. So Jainism is this obsession with do no harm.
Yeah, she tells him over and over what she's all about.
Do no harm, do no harm, do no harm.
Right.
And yet she has committed murder.
Exactly.
Purposefully. She purposefully caused these bombings.
She has the nerve to wear a veil to protect the microbes that are in the atmosphere.
And yet she has killed people.
Yeah, like human beings.
So he's just come from that to go to this dinner with his newly made up wife, who has gone through a horrible depression and has decided to fix her depression by fixing her face.
Right. So having surgery.
And then this dinner with these supposed friends and family. And the dinner just gets more, and I just will have to hear your example of the dinner too, but
that was my favorite
more
part,
and more
though.
absurd. Yeah, well, it felt like finally
Yeah.
the story was coming to a head, because the story is not linear. It jumps from time period to time period to time period, and you don't really know where it's supposed to go. You just know that there's a bombing, and
I think that's the point where all the characters are being the most truthful with each other.
Yes.
And so, and it's like, and it's at a point where it's like explosive in a sense. Like it's
okay.
It is explosive.
There's a lot of things. You know, somebody gets stabbed. You know, there's people that are, you know, banging in the kitchen.
Yeah.
He finds out his wife has
had an affair.
She had an affair, and then he admits his own affair.
Yes, it's very explosive, but then it just
drops off. Yeah.
He never tells them he ran into his daughter.
Right.
You don't really know how it all ends.
It was my favorite scene because I finally felt like redemption. Like all the reading that I had to do, all the backstory from these characters that I didn't think were relevant were converging, and they were meeting for the first time. And I thought that something profound was going to happen.
But then it didn't.
It didn't, or you know, I always say maybe I just missed it. So here's what I'll tell you about the movie. That scene never takes place.
Wow.
How dissatisfying.
Wow.
The entire scene doesn't take place. In fact, there's a funeral that Nathan attends for the Swede, and guess who shows up to the funeral?
No way.
I swear. Yeah, the daughter shows up.
Wow.
She's basically like, she's stone-faced. She just walks very like everybody's kind of like looking like her way, like trying to figure out if it's her, not really sure about it. And the daughter, essentially after the funeral is over and everybody's kind of leaving, she's the one that's going against them. And she approaches the coffin or the burial site for her father, and it's just that moment where, you know, this character in the film who is, you know, exiled, who'd been missing, who'd caused so much controversy, you know, now has the nerve to attend the funeral of her father.
Wow.
It's a totally different take.
That really changes it though.
Different.
Like, you know, considering the fact that that Mary died before the Swede died in the book.
Yes, in the book.
And so that
Allude
already
to that at least.
Because I mean, if you know, in the book, you're especially if we're talking about the first part of the book that we've all come to the consensus was very difficult to get through.
Yes.
You know, I think part of him reaching out to Nathan and wanting to tell kind of his story, but not really knowing how to, is part of that was really the fact that, you know, he had all this controversy with his daughter, and he finally had peace with that, but then now she's passed, and now he knows that he's about to also pass. Yeah. And where I feel like it kind of takes away from that moment.
Oh, absolutely.
Entirely.
There were no layers of the fictional, you know, it was essentially that Jerry meets Nathan at the reunion and just tells him the story of his brother's life.
Which is it's very linear, but it's so not true to the book and the spirit of the book. There was
something, I would say that I enjoyed the book more because of that element, because it's something unique that I've never encountered, at least. Those extra layers of that sort of creepy, obsessive vibe, but that was really necessary in order to kind of gauge the scope really of the book and what it's supposed to represent, and this character, Nathan, essentially. So in all honesty, I know it was challenging, but I appreciated it, and I'm glad it was one of the first ones that we picked up, just so we knew how to react to something that was so challenging.
Yes. Well, and it was interesting, you know, it feels very relevant to today, even though it was written in the 90s and it was staged in the 60s. Because there's politics, there's opposing opinions, there's, you know, this, how far do you go
there was this idea...
your idea.
Yeah, there's this idea of the American pastoral. What is it? What does it mean to be the perfect citizen?
Yes.
What does it mean to be all American?
Yes.
And that's, I think, something that's come up plenty of times recently.
Yeah.
Whatever your affiliation is, I think it's important, to recognize that, Americans come in a variety of different walks of life and things like that. But this definitely represents a past image of what that was, the post World War II, essentially. So, I
definitely a thought-provoking book.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very much so.
Thought-provoking.
Yes.
So yeah, I'd recommend it. If you are into challenging things, definitely pick it up.
If you've got a month.
Right. If you've got a month to spare, pick it up. And I just mean that because it's not one of those books that if you're tired, if you're hungry, or if anything like that, you can't just pick it up. It's not a quick 15-minute on your break, so I'm going to read a few pages type of book, really dedicate time to it. But it was good. It was really well written. I'm glad that I encountered it. It's hard to say if I'd read it again. And the book was a lot different. So it wasn't bad, but I would say that I appreciated the book a lot more. That about wraps it up. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to Cover to Cover. This sums up our review on this. If you like our content, please like our video, share it, write some comments. We'd definitely love to hear some of your participation or discussion points. If there's anything that resonated, bring it up. If you disagreed, bring it up. If there's a question that you might have, we'd be happy to answer it as long as it's within relevant terms. So
no trolls.
This is us signing off. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.